It's interesting because people can actually see us. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Festival of Enterprise, Festival of Startups this week. We had a fantastic session this morning with Magnus from Antler, talking about funding and how to secure funding for your startups. And now our host has swapped seats. Alex, who usually hosts the sessions, is going to be talking to you all about how you can use free resources online to get your message out there. And I believe one of the things you're going to be talking about is podcasting. Is that true, Alex?
100%. You know where I was going to go with this one. I am going to cover all options as I see it at the moment, which are three when it comes to content creation, free content creation, and which is potentially your best option given what's happened over the last 8-9 months in the world as well. So yeah, excited to share this with everybody.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to hand over to you, Alex, because you know the ropes. I don't need to explain anything to you. But just to let you all know, guys, we've got some fantastic content this week. If you joined us last week, we're starting to put that content live on our website now, so you can catch up on anything you missed last week. And also, you know, there's some more content about digital marketing, sales, all this week. We've got fantastic sessions tomorrow about how to sell yourselves online, how to do digital marketing, some great speakers. So make sure you sign up for those, and also make sure you share them with your friends as well. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alex, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Kasim. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So, as Kasim mentioned, we have got an amazing program. We had an awesome week last week, and we kicked things off with Magnus Grimmeland from Antler this morning. And then I've got the pleasure of hosting a good friend of mine, Will Niven from Unboxed, who's going to be talking all things that you need to know about websites this afternoon, how to get it fully optimized. And he's worked with some amazing clients, built 100-grand websites for people, and started an agency at the age of 19. So literally built websites for free all the way up to these big all singing, all dancing ones. So he's going to have some great content to share with you. We're going to be coming live at 2 p.m. today. But in the meantime, I'm here to talk content creation. So just a couple of little bits of housekeeping for you if you'd like to interact during this webinar with me. On the right-hand side, you'll see two boxes. You've got the live chat and you've got the questions tab below there. Feel free to use both of those to comment on what I'm talking about, to ask me questions, to post up, to connect. You know, we'd be normally at Olympia or NEC for this kind of thing, like we were last year. So use the opportunity to connect. I love to connect with everybody. I'll leave my contact details at the end as well, but I love to connect with everybody. Been connecting with people all week, online and offline as well. So feel free to post up your LinkedIn profile into the live chat box, and I'll be happy to connect with you. There's my one right there now. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to kick things off today. But as I say, I'm going to talk you through my slides, going to check in with you regularly, and I'm going to answer all of your questions as well. So hello to Paola and Jordan and everybody else who is joining us this afternoon now, 12:05. So I'm just going to share my screen with you, which will mean I can't see anything. I can't see anything else. I'm going to play. There you go. So let me know that you are seeing those slides. Just give me a yes or a no in the chat, because I can only see my slide deck at this point. So let me know that you can see that slide. Just post up a yes in the box. You should be able to see Podpreneur, Ultimate Podcast Mastery, Festival of Startups, Alex Chisnall. Just let me know that you can see that. Thank you, Emma. Okay, brilliant. So first of all, I've updated these slides. Those of you who've seen me present before during the course of the summer, I've updated these slides. Some of you might see a couple of these before. So who could tell me who this chap is here? Can anybody let me know who he is? He's just signed earlier this year a very big deal with Spotify, a tech giant that you see behind you. Thank you, Kieran, for checking in as well, and Tony and John and Shalini and Philip. Brilliant. So who knows? Does anybody know who he is? Anybody want to take a wild guess? Okay. So that's Joe Rogan. He's got the most popular. Oh, Tony just got there. I know there's a little bit of a delay on this. Well done, Tony. So Joe Rogan. So he signed what is believed to be a $100 million contract to exclusively have his content on Spotify. So has Kim Kardashian. Believe it or not, she's signed to do a podcast exclusively for Spotify as well. I believe it's actually going to be on the legal tip, which I believe she has a law degree. Don't know if that's fake news or if that's real news, but apparently she signed up as well. So he gets 190 million downloads for his show, which is pretty insane. The guy from, I like that, Edwin, the guy from Die Hard, Bruce Willis, he does pass more than a passing resemblance to Bruce Willis. I just saw The Fifth Element the other night, which is a Bruce Willis movie that I hadn't seen in many years. So what I want to talk you through today is 3 different options as I see it when it comes to creating your content. And what I hope that you can take away today is that I believe podcasting, being just one of those, is here to stay, that it's not too late to start, that anybody, even with zero tech knowledge, can start, that it's not expensive, that people will want to listen to you, and you only need 4 hours a week to get started. So for me, I think you've got 3 options, okay? You've got visual content, you've got audio content, and you've got written content. So let me know what your pillar content is right now in the chat box. Is your pillar content visual? Is it audio, or is it written? And by pillar content, I mean your main content that you put out. What is it? So for me, if it's visual, you could have a YouTube channel. So you're putting out video content on a regular basis. If it's audio, you could have your own podcast or your own radio show, and you're putting that out on a weekly basis. Or is it the written word? Is it a blog? Are you using written content instead as your main pillar content? Let me know. So Philip is visual. YouTube. Fiona is visual. Interesting. Alexander, great name, by the way. Is written but needs to start with visual. Jordan, visual. Product, images. Tony, written. Emma, written. So a real mix there. I think the one missing is the podcasting, which is a big part of what I want to tell you about today, because that is where I see a big opportunity. So pillar content, as I said, that can be whatever of those 3 options, but you need to have one. So if you haven't got anything at the moment, and a lot of brands that I speak to, maybe surprising, maybe unsurprising, and I'm talking like big brands, big blue chip brands with £1 billion worth budgets, don't have a pillar content. There's not a regular thing. They might be sharing content on social media, and they might have a plan for that social media, but they don't have one pillar where they take their content from, that they focus on, that they can then take that as macro content. Maybe that's another word for it. That's your macro content. But then you disseminate that macro content and distribute it via social media as micro content. And it just makes things a lot easier for you. So if you are a startup, you are an SME, an entrepreneur, a brand, it makes things a lot easier for you if you just focus on creating one thing a week, or documenting one thing a week, which is what I'll talk about in a little bit, because a lot of people get hung up on the fact that they think they have to spend a lot of time creating content. You can actually document what you do and save you a lot of time and money as well. But if you focus in on that one thing a week, and that could be a keynote, that could be a podcast, that could be a YouTube video, whatever it is, if you focus in on that one thing a week, you can then disseminate from that one piece of content 30, 40, 50, 60 pieces of other content that you can share on all these different platforms. And it just makes things a lot easier. So I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time telling you about who I am and what I do, but just to preface this, those of you who've been watching during the last week will have seen me hosting a lot of this stuff. And just to tell you, so my speciality is podcasting, is content creation, is entrepreneurship. My podcast, Screw It, Just Do It, is in the top 1.5% of podcasts globally. So what's that mean? That means I'm in the top 27,000 out of nearly 2 million podcasts out there in the world today. Taken students to the top of the podcast charts already. My podcast, as you see on the left, Screw It, Just Do It, has been #1. Likewise, clients like Jonathan at the top there, we've taken him to #1 as well. Everywhere, bizarrely, from the UK to Uganda. Last month, we had #1 in the Philippines and a #1 in Lithuania. And the podcast is now listened to in over 150 countries worldwide. That's where it is this week. We're number 15 in the UK chart. It does fluctuate up and down, but that's just to kind of frame things from my point of view, just to show you that I do know a little bit about what I'm talking about today, so you don't just think I'm making this up as I go along. So why now? You know, why now? Why is now a good time to be creating content and focusing on picking a pillar content and zeroing in on that and making that your go-to platform? I'm going to tell you why I think now is a good time. So I'm going to start with podcasting. So these are the figures pre-pandemic, pre-lockdown and post-lockdown kicking in. Literally, when the world was shut down, everyone was at home, everybody came back to their homes from their offices. So there was a 10% increase in listening just in that 1 month. And if you look at some of the countries, it was even more than that. So the UK, it was 20% increase in listenership. In Italy, 22%, France, 31%. Super interesting, I think. And if you look at some of the stats there as well, yeah, look, no surprise, people are listening to podcasts about science and medicine. They're listening to podcasts about society and culture because it's changing. Kids and families, well, kids weren't going to school, so everybody's stuck indoors together. And then you've got TV and film, well, people are looking for entertainment. And then you've got comedy. People need a laugh. So for me, I'm going to whip through a bunch of factors what I find really interesting at the moment. So you saw the earlier stuff with Joe Rogan and Kim Kardashian. So Spotify have made a real big play when it comes to podcasting. And look, no shit, Sherlock. Whatever platform you're on, they want to keep you there for as long as possible. So when you used to be on Spotify listening to music, if you wanted to listen to a podcast, you would have to go to Apple's platform to listen to their podcast. So Spotify clearly want to keep you on their platform for longer. So they decided to go all in on podcasting. You see that now on other platforms. You see LinkedIn using stories, like we need another platform for stories. You see Instagram using Reels, so taking that TikTok element. So they're all trying to garner attention and keep your attention on their platform for longer. You know, no surprises in the great scheme of things, I know. Spotify buys Anchor. So what's Anchor? It's a hosting platform where your podcast lives. Very much like when you have a website, it needs to be hosted somewhere. So Spotify spend money on that. They've actually spent over $500 million now getting into podcasting. Been buying podcasting publishing companies. They've bought their own platform. They're spending big money on the likes of Joe Rogan and Kim Kardashian as well. So it's a super interesting time if you're looking to create content via podcasting. New cars are being made with the technology that you literally need to press a button while you're in your car and you get to listen to podcasts in a second. How's that going to change things? Well, look, when the world does go back to some version of normality, people are going to be commuting again. Yes, people will work from home for a little bit longer. I'm sure they will. And I'm sure there'll be a bit of a hybrid version, but people are going to travel again. People are going to be in their cars again. One of the biggest, I suppose, most time that people spend listening to podcasts are during car journeys. So if they can listen to podcasts in their car, people are going to listen to them more. So listenership is going to go up again. Apple have seen this. They've taken notice. They're employing more people when it comes to their platform. They're also changing the categories to make there more categories available, so more people can get their podcast found. Google. So you used to be able to only find blogs being indexed. Then they decided to index videos. So if you searched, you could find video content coming up. And then now if you search, you can find audio coming up as well. So podcasts coming up on your Google searches as well. And then big news this year has been Amazon. There's a surprise. So Amazon now have got into the podcasting space, and this only happened weeks ago, if not a month or so ago. So you can now have your podcast found on Amazon and on Audible books as well. So this opens up another whole potential audience for everybody that's subscribing to Amazon Music, subscribing to Amazon audiobooks as well. So for me, the fact that you've got all of these tech giants piling into this space, the likes of Spotify and Amazon, and then you've got Apple and Google reacting as well, it only tells me one thing. It tells me that you want to be looking at this as an option when it comes to getting attention on you and your brand. Okay, so there are 37 million YouTube channels out there at the moment. There's over 2 billion active people on YouTube, but there are 37 million YouTube channels. There are 31 million blogs and podcasts. I did mention this before, but no one might have picked up on it. I don't know. How many podcasts do you think are out there? Check in with me. Let me know how many you think. And this has changed dramatically this year, I have to say. But let me know, what do you think? How many podcast channels do you think out there? Not sure. 59 million, 50 million, 2 billion. No idea, says Bernadette. Come on, Bernadette, you had all the best questions last week. Okay, I'll put you out of your misery. 1.8 million. Drop in the ocean, in my opinion. Grain of sand on a beach, whatever analogy you'd like me to make. But tiny compared to the written word and compared to visual as well. So 37 million YouTube channels, 31 million blogs, 1.8 million podcasts. Okay, now that has accelerated dramatically this year, as you might expect. During lockdown, more people being at home. I mean, I even started a free Facebook group back when lockdown happened, and we saw dozens of people launching their podcasts. I was just doing free tutorials on there every day for a couple of weeks, and we had dozens and dozens of people launching podcasts. So that doesn't surprise me, compounded globally. We've literally gone from 1 million podcasts in April. It was April the 20th this year, to 1.8 million now in November. So things are accelerating massively in the space. As Jordan says, that's really surprising. Yeah, 100% agree with you. But look, I still think there's a window of opportunity here. You might think, to go from 1 million in April to 1.8 million already is pretty dramatic, which I agree it is. But I still think there's a window of opportunity here. I was chatting to somebody, fellow podcaster in the fashion space in New York, and she was saying she likens it very much to when blogs started, that there's a 10-year window here, and she thinks we're only at around year 3 or 4 in the 10-year cycle. But hey, nobody knows what the next technology to come along is going to be. Nobody knows what hybrid version we might have again out of all of these options out there. But it's my firm belief that there is a window of opportunity here. And if podcasting fits in with, personally, yourself, i.e. you're comfortable using it in that medium, and also if it fits in with your strategy for your brand, then why wouldn't you want to try? And if you're not doing any of these things at the moment, then you need to be trying them out. Are you more comfortable on video? Are you more comfortable writing? Are you more comfortable recording audio? And for me, it was audio. Probably something to do with my history, because I started off back at BBC Radio Wales in Cardiff. And so straight out of uni. So my comfort zone, I suppose, is audio. Video, I'm trying to embrace it more. Having done live events for quite a while now, it was my team that was getting me to do videos before and after events to encourage me to do it. And you can see that you get rewarded by the algorithm. Like if you're doing lives now, live streams. So I do live streams in my Facebook group. I co-host another podcast called Not Just Crew. We do Facebook Lives there. You get rewarded by going live and doing live video heavily, especially by Facebook at the moment on their platform. So as I mentioned before, stats-wise, 24% increase from 2018 to 2019 and a 50% increase from January 2019 to April 2020. And then another huge increase from April through till now as well. So 8.5 million people listen to podcasts each week in the UK, equal to 1 in 8 of the total population. And this is an interesting one. So those of you who might be looking at monetization, looking to make money from your content, from podcasts, 75% of advertisers surveyed by DAX plan to increase their podcast ad spend. So you'd assume 75% of advertisers were very happy with the return on investment, the ROI that they got from spending, sponsoring podcasts and having ads on podcasts. So I like this quote: a podcast is a brand's ownable, scalable, intimate stage outside of the Facebook powerhouse. With podcasting, the audience doesn't exist in one place, in the hands of just one private company. The podcast can live across multiple platforms at the same time. So what I mean by that is, see, so many people build their businesses, build their brands from a social media platform, be that Instagram, get 1 million followers on Instagram, get 1 million followers on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. But I've seen this happen before. If the algorithm changes, you lose your audience. Your audience just doesn't get to see your stuff anymore. The beauty of podcasting is you create the content yourself. You still own that content. It doesn't live on a Facebook or an Instagram. You're just distributing it on that platform. You own your content. It's hosted on a hosting platform like a website. You distribute it then through Apple, through Spotify, through SoundCloud, Stitcher, Amazon, etc. And then you create micro content and share that with the world through the social media platforms. Unlike other mediums out there. That is why I like it a lot. You have a library of content that you own. That's your legacy for as long as you are here, as long as you are hosting it somewhere. And this is just an example to show you. So Jonathan Bowman-Perks didn't even have a email list when he started his podcast. He had a YouTube channel, but he wasn't getting anything from his YouTube channel, wasn't getting many subscribers, wasn't getting many views, didn't even have an Instagram profile, an Instagram account. He had a small following on LinkedIn. Jonathan worked with me, came through my course actually, then became a client as part of our agency, and ended up getting a top 10 podcasts in the UK, and has gone on to have his podcast in the top 20 in a whole bunch of different countries: Italy, Spain, South Africa, Australia, etc. So it can be done. It can be done by anybody and everybody. So you are your own media. So whatever form of content you decide to share, guys, I want to tell you about today, it doesn't matter which one you choose. But if you use this little thing in your hand, you really are your own media. So whether you are creating videos on your phone, whether you are recording your podcast on your phone, which you can do again, or whether you are writing your blog on your phone, it can all be done through that. I always get asked about equipment when it comes to podcasting. And it's one of those things. How long is a piece of string? You can literally start with your phone and the free apps that come with it. You can then scale to buy expensive microphones and recorders, etc., if you so want. But you can literally get started for free. As I say, it's all in your phone, from recording apps to even using your laptop, the free software, editing software that comes with that, whether you've got a GarageBand or something like that already preloaded on your laptop. And what I love about it as well is that you get to expose your brand to your brand to a new audience. So any of these any of these content creation avenues that you may choose to take, when you start out, you're going to tell your existing audience about them. But then when you post them out there to the world, and if you follow the right instructions and get it right, then you can land with a bang. You can land in charts, as with Jonathan with Apple, and a whole brand new audience gets to see your podcast. Another example here for you is Scott Stockdale. So he launched his podcast, and after 6 days, only 6 days after launching Entrepreneurs Can Party, he had a top 10 podcast in the UK. Again, the likes of, you can see number 6, Holly Tucker, number 4, Stephen Bartlett, number 8, Rachel Hollis. Very well-known podcasts. How is he able to do that? He's able to do that by following the instructions written on the tin. Again, came through a student of mine and has been very successful in the podcasting space now. So it gives you the ability to attract new listeners if you land with a bang, land in the charts like that. And again, this might surprise you, it might not. Gen Z is the most popular listening demographic when it comes to podcasts. So nearly 50% of Generation Z listen to podcasts. So if that's an audience that you want to reach through your brand, through your business that you want to sell to, then it's a great platform for you to consider. Let me know who's looking at that audience as something that they want to sell their products or services to. Interested to know, again, just what kind of audience we've got here. Gives you the ability, like I say, to amplify your story and educate your audience about your products and services. So for me, you could do this on any forms of content, be that video, be that written, be that audio. But for me, it's just all about the storytelling. And if you tell your story to your audience, interweave the products and services that you have in there naturally without trying to beat somebody over the head with a sales message, then over time, your audience is going to learn, your new audience is going to learn about your products and services. So as I say, if you remember, I said, if you launch a podcast or a vlog to your existing followers, whether you've got an email list, whether you've got followers on different social media platforms, you can continue to tell stories about the new products and services you're bringing to the market and what's happening in your business with them. But it gives you the opportunity to educate a brand new audience who'll find your podcast educating, interesting, informative, amusing, whatever, with your products and services, and with any new ones that come out as well. And over time, look, for me, any of these things that you're potentially going to try out there, you've got to have the long-term view. You've got to play the long game, and eventually you will be able to turn those into customers. So something I want to touch on today with you, and if you've got questions, as I say, pop them up and I will answer them coming towards the end of my slides for you today. Thank Thank you for your comment, Bernadette, who says she hadn't thought about it. Pop your questions. Let me know your thoughts, and I will have a look when we come to the end. But the beauty of it is you can turn one weekly show into a month's worth of content. And you know, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want the ability to do that? To have, as I say, that pillar content, that one focus each week, be that a keynote that you deliver online. Is it a live webinar like this that you're delivering? Is it a podcast episode? Is it a vlog? Is it a blog you've written? You can turn that one weekly piece of content into a month's worth of micro content. And look, if you, as I said earlier, if you are in a space that you don't want to be creating content, or you feel traumatized by the thought that you need to create more content, that you feel you're already creating a lot of content, then document what you do. It's the easiest thing in the world. Talk about what you do, write about what you do, video what you do. Simple as that. Don't have to go out and create the next Netflix series. You can literally just document what you do. People love stories about people. People love the behind the scenes stuff on how you're doing what you're doing, for example. So don't be afraid just to document it, to pick up your phone, to talk about it, to video it. Okay, that is the easiest way that you can get to create content. Be a DJ. What do I mean by being a DJ? So what I mean by that is give your take on something. Okay, it doesn't have to be your original content, but you can give your spin on that content, your opinion on that content. And that is then your content. You've put a different angle on it. Okay, so you might see, you might, I'm trying to think, a couple of guys in my Facebook group who've got football podcasts. So they aren't creating anything brand new there. They're talking about a match, a football match that happened yesterday, last week. They're not creating brand new content. They're commenting on content that's already been made by somebody else, but they're giving their slant on it, their opinion, their angle. So that's another way to think about it as well. So thank you for the questions. I will answer those. Just saw one come in. So it's probably and the other option is create. So I'll go into that shortly. So be a DJ. So probably the most common question I get asked is, how long should a podcast be? That and the equipment side of things, what equipment you need. But how long should podcast be? Again, for me, every question you should ever have about your content, you should ask your ideal customer. So one of the first exercise I go through, for example, everybody that I work with as a client, everybody that I work through as a student with coaching, is literally getting to fill out a document where they identify exactly who their ideal listener is, or if you've got a YouTube channel, who your ideal viewer is. So every question you ever get comes back to that ideal customer. And they should have a name, you know, if that's Katie or John, whatever. You should know your ideal customer better than you know yourself. So how long should your podcast be? How long would Katie or John listen to your podcast for? And where would they be consuming your podcast? Would they be listening to it in the gym? Will they be, no, they won't, because gyms are shut. Would it be walking a dog? Depending on where you are, you might be allowed to walk your dog. Are they doing their housework? Yes, everyone's doing housework at the moment. So you need to flip it back to that every single time. And for me, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to this. You can get a podcast so I listen to Neil Patel Marketing School. That's like 5 to 10 minutes, a daily episode. Or you can listen, like Joe Rogan I mentioned earlier, his podcast can be hours long. All depends on your audience. I mean, I've worked with brands like Grenade, for example, a sports nutrition brand. And when I looked at their podcast, they were recording podcasts of well over an hour, like hour and a half per episode. But when we looked at the metrics, the data from their podcast, their audience was dropping off at about 35, 40 minutes. So what does that tell me? It tells me that their audience doesn't want to listen to an hour and a half podcast. They want to listen to shorter episodes. And the interesting trend in this industry is shorter. So at the moment, the average podcast, I think it's something like 32 or 31 minutes, and it's dropped 1 minute from last year. So the trend is getting shorter, but I think there's plenty of space for people who want to create long form content, long podcasts, and there's plenty of space for those who want to create shorter podcasts. It all comes down to who your target audience is. Okay. So as I say, you can document what you're doing, you can put your own slant on it and be a DJ, or you can create your own brand new content. And that can take many forms when it comes to podcasting. I have a twice weekly show, a Wednesday episode. I'll be interviewing leading and up and coming entrepreneurs, the likes of a Ted Baker founder, Ray Kelvin, or a Holly Tucker from Not on the High Street, for example. And then on a Saturday, I'm doing a solo episode. So that's my kind of DJ moment. That's me putting my own opinion, my slant, talking about a particular subject that I think my audience wants to know about, and how I can provide some value and resources for them. And the next thing you want to do is distribute that content. You know, however method you've got it, how do you distribute that content? Okay, so that's what you want to be thinking about. And again, where does your audience hang out? Do they hang out on Instagram? Do they hang out on LinkedIn? Do they hang out on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, etc., etc.? So that's what you want to be focusing on is one platform and getting that platform right before you need to think about other platforms, because it's just going to take up all of your time. You're going to be chasing your tail if you're trying to post on every single platform about it. And then listen and watch and look what's been popular when it comes to your content. And I'll give you an example. So this is the kind of stuff that we will put out on social media. So we would take an episode and we would then cut it up into different posts, different micro content, as I say, and we would share it with our audience. So we would have something called an audiogram, and that's going to be audio. It's going to have subtitles, so it's going to be written, and then it's going to have visual. So we're going to be either having a video clip in there, or we're going to have a bunch of images, and it's just scrolling through the different images. So for me, they're really popular because you're hitting all the different senses. Somebody just can't taste it or smell it, but they can certainly watch it, they can listen to it, etc. So those are really popular. We get quotes from those episodes, and we'll put the quotes up on still images. We'll create different artwork, almost like an album, you know, like a CD cover or a record cover, and we will give these to our interviewees to share with their audience. And the key for me is all about getting your speakers, your interviewees to share with your audience, because you will then get a percentage of their audience as your listeners. So is that making sense for everybody? Does that sound like something that you're interested in finding more information about? And I know there's a little bit of a delay. I'm just going to have a quick drink because I've been talking for 39 minutes without drawing breath. I know it. So apologies, but we're nearly at the end, and I will answer any questions then. But yeah, let me know, is this a medium that you're interested in pursuing? Excuse me. So the beauty for me about this as well, something that I should have probably mentioned earlier, is that with a podcast, you can also have a YouTube video and you can also have a written blog. How? So simple. A growing trend is recording live podcasts. So literally interviewing your guests and videoing the recording. And at the moment, you know, technology has been a great leveler. We've all been indoors. We've all been using Zoom and the such like. Meeting up in a studio like I normally would is not happening in many countries. So the opportunity is there for you to simply hit record when you're interviewing somebody via Zoom. And I've found 99.9% of people are comfortable doing that. And I think, again, that's a product of the times we live in, that everybody's comfortable doing a Zoom. Not everybody is. Some people just want to record audio. But for me, it's great. People want to record video, the recording of the podcast. Brilliant. That gives you something to put on your YouTube channel, gives you more content you can chop up and put on social media. You can also transcribe the episode. What do I mean by that? So you can literally get a written account, word for word, and software that does that for you. Rev.com is one that does subtitles as well for your video. But transcription means you can then put that out as a blog on your website. Or, again, you can disseminate that and pull out maybe 2 or 3 points numerous times and put that out as more long form content. So like a long post on LinkedIn, for example. And you can choose shorter ones like the quotes you see here. You could put those out on social media. So you could put those out on Instagram or Facebook. You could also use Instagram TV, and those video clips that you got, you could put short couple of minute video clips. So this is just ideas for you on how you can you lost sound from me, did you? Don't know. Facebook group is called Podpreneur as well, by the way. I will, nearly at the end, I will show you as well. And you can also get sponsorship for your podcast as well. So probably a third most popular question I get asked is, how can I make money from podcasting? So sponsorship is probably the biggest one, but you need to get, not necessarily. So do you need big numbers to get there? Not necessarily. Yes, it's helpful if you've already got an existing audience out there. But for me, it's if you've got existing relationships with organizations, with people, and they would like access to who's in your network, that's often how sponsorship opportunities happen, no matter what type of content we're talking about. But that's what's happened with me. And I'll liken it to, for example, if your podcast is talking about I don't know, cars, and it's specifically talking about BMWs, and it's specifically talking about BMWs in the UK, I don't know, and you know somebody who happens to own a whole bunch of BMW dealerships, how interested would they be in sponsoring your podcast that is going to an audience of BMW lovers? So niches like that, and podcasting for me, you can go broad. And by that, I mean, you could choose a category like business or sport or comedy, and you can launch into that category. But for me, if you go below that 1 or 2 levels, which you can do, for example, entrepreneurship or business news or marketing or management are all subcategories of business, you've got more opportunity to reach more of an audience. And that, again, is going to be attractive to your sponsors as well. So coming to the end now, a couple of slides left, and I'm going to answer all those questions. So hang in there. I know I've gone through quite a lot today. Imposter syndrome. So I think everybody, I mean, let me know first of all. I was just about to say everybody suffers from imposter syndrome, but maybe they don't. Type in, let me know. Have you ever suffered from imposter syndrome? This is something I talked about last week on my podcast. And I think podcasting possibly offers you, I wouldn't say the easiest option, but for me, it's a more comfortable option if you suffer from imposter syndrome. And what I mean by imposter syndrome is literally if you think, you doubt yourself. Who would listen to me? Who in the world is going to listen to me? Who wants to know my opinion? I'm not going to get, why would I release a podcast or a vlog or write a blog? Who's interested in what I've got to say? No one's going to listen to it. No one's going to watch it. No one's going to read it. All those sorts of doubts, fears, anxieties. Let me know. Post up. Samantha says, always. Anybody else, or is it just Samantha? It can't be just Samantha out there who suffered from imposter syndrome, because I suffered from imposter syndrome. I recorded my interviews for my podcast in January 2017. Burak says me as well. Thank you for being honest. Jocelyn says for years. Paolo says imposter syndrome is the worst kind of self-doubt. Self-doubt, that's a better way of phrasing it, as I'd expect from you, Paola. Shalini, definitely me. Yeah, look, me too. that's why I recorded my interviews in the January of 2017. So Stephen Bartlett from Social Chain was my first ever interview. I then sat on those interviews for 5 bloody months, and I didn't release them until the May of 2017. And, you know, people ask me, have you got any regrets about starting a podcast? And I'm coming up to episode 300, which will be the week before Christmas, which is a really nice way to round off the year, really, with 300 episodes in the can. Just a quirk of fate that it's ended up like that. But for me, it's been super interesting. But that's, you know, imposter syndrome was definitely 100% there. That's why I sat on those podcasts for 5 months, because I doubted myself. Why would anybody want to listen to it? Who am I? You know, all those things. Even at that point, I was hosting live events and people were attending the live events, and it's just another extension of that, isn't it? So if you are already creating content, so, you know, if you've ever shared any post about you and your business on social media, okay, you have a personal brand and you are creating content. Simple as that, in my opinion. I might be wrong, but that's what I think. Love the bloody 5 months, I know. Priya, great question. What benefits have you found from podcasts? I will go through those in 2 minutes, 100%, because honestly, it's changed my life, and for the better. It's been a life-changing journey that's literally still only less than 4 years in. But, you know, imposter syndrome, I find it easier to hide behind audio than I do doing something like this video. And by some quirk of fate as well, I actually find it easier to do live video like this than recorded video. Bizarre. I have no idea why. But, you know, if you're like me like that and you suffer from imposter syndrome, then, you know, recording behind, you know, just one of these things, a mic, sat on your sofa, or using your phone, as I said earlier, I find is just a lot easier than having to record video of yourself on your phone or sitting down. I used to do blogs all the time. I spent 3 years in my previous business. I was in the sports and health space. So I had a bunch of sports injury clinics, and we had boot camps and personal trainers and all sports therapists and all that kind of thing. I used to write a blog every single week, and I did that for 3 years. And, you know, I got to the stage where I didn't enjoy it. But it served a purpose. We got to #1, page 1 of Google for all of the keywords I wanted to. So you could definitely go down the blog route. I found I was just getting to that stage where I was getting writer's block. Whereas podcast, I don't even think I'm scratching the surface yet. There are a billion other guests out there who I'd still love to chat to. And for me, it's been the equivalent of a Harvard education. You know, my nephew's got a scholarship to Princeton, to Roe, which is amazing in itself. And that's something like 250 grand. It would have cost for 4-year education in the States for that. So I felt like I've got the equivalent of a Harvard education by interviewing the likes of a Lord Billamoria or a Rowena Bird from Lush or an Al Barrett from Grenade, all these people. So, you know, my advice to you is try it out. If you do suffer from imposter syndrome, audio could be an easier way for you to build your brand, tell your stories, etc. So, you know, be heard, make podcasting part of your marketing strategy. I've gotten more and more inquiries since September, which is really interesting, from brands who are looking to explore different digital marketing. And by that, I mean live webinars and podcasting as well, which is the two things that I do. So I will show you podcasting group. So someone mentioned that earlier, and I'm going to answer all your questions now. I'm going to come out of this. So that's my free podcasting group. It's called Podpreneur. And we've got about 700 members now. I took that screenshot a little while ago. And every week I've been doing 2 live trainings in there. And one of those is a AAA Ask Alex Anything. So I answer all podcasting questions. And I interview somebody every week about their podcast as well. I also have a podcast agency where we make podcasts for brands, everything from finding them clients through to the editing and the production and the distribution. etc., etc. I'll come back to the easiest way to connect with me. I'm going to come out. So I'm going to answer all your questions. That's I've literally spent my time during lockdown quite constructively by literally putting everything that I've ever learned about podcasting into a course called Ultimate Podcast Mastery. That's at ultimatepodcastmastery.com. And at the moment, we're just testing it for a week. Got it on there for under $100, which I think is about £75. And that's just testing it at the moment. In its testing phase, but I've literally got on there every template, cheat sheet, roadmap that you'd ever need. I think there's 15 of them in there that you would need, plus hours and hours of me talking you through ideation, what ideas to come up with when you want to create a podcast, right through to growing a community and getting it, like I say, like mine is now, #1 ranked show, top 1.5% in the world. So I'm going to come out of this now and have a look at what questions we've got. So I'll leave that up there and I'll leave my contact details up. But let's have a quick look. Maybe it's different when I am a speaker. I can see the live chat. I can't see questions. If you've put a question in, I think maybe it's because I'm not a host like I normally am. It's the first time I've done this as a speaker. So if you put a question in the question tab, if you can pop it in the live chat, I can definitely see it. Maybe that's a quirk of this platform. So I'm not seeing any questions there. So let's have a quick look at your questions, guys, and I will answer everything. And by the way, if you do have any questions, I will post up my contact details. LinkedIn is the easiest way to get hold of me. Just posted that up there. But let's have a quick look. Let's have a quick look at your questions. So, Jocelyn, I think we need a podcast, perhaps monthly. What would you advise budgeting for, say, a 30-minute interview? So I guess you mean by time-wise, budgeting for a 30-minute interview. So for me, monthly. So I would definitely push you towards doing at least a bi-monthly, i.e. every 2 weeks, if not every week. But the way I often, most brands that I work with, the route they go down is they create a series. So they create it in advance and then launch it and then promote each one every week or every 2 weeks or every month. So because I just think if you just only putting one out every month, I don't think your audience, it's going to be really hard to build a community and an audience around that. So the average person listens to 6 to 8 podcasts a week. And I think if you've got too long a gap between your content, I know what I'm like. I literally wait every Monday to hear my favorite podcast, which is called How I Built This by NPR. And I'm gutted when it's not there. Like if they put a repeat episode out, I will go somewhere else. And I don't listen to that one anymore. I lost interest and I now listen to something else. I think you're going to struggle to keep somebody's attention. That's just my opinion. But if you were budgeting for a 30-minute interview, I would say, and this is just me, I would spend 30 to 60 minutes researching your interview. I would spend then maybe allowing 60 minutes for the interview, i.e. 15 minutes beforehand to kind of break the ice and have a chat with your guest, and then 15 minutes afterwards just to chat with them after that as well, because I always ask them who they would refer to me, who would be a good interviewee for them to pass on, and just making sure we've got all their social handles and all that kind of stuff as well. And then I would say you're probably looking at half an hour again to an hour to upload to your platform. And then it's up to you how long you spend on promotion. So if a social post takes you 30 minutes every day, then factor that in as well. But I honestly think you can get away with, like, say, 4 hours a week. So for me, that's, say, half a day. And the biggest block when I work with brands is usually the CEO wants to be the host. And often they're the busiest person or one of the busiest people. So I'm normally saying, if you block off a Friday afternoon, how productive are you on a Friday afternoon anyway? Schedule your interviews then. Okay. Bernadette says, I need this. Good to hear. Awesome. Congrats. Course creation is so much work. Yeah, I didn't know that before I started. honestly, it's nearly killed me creating a course. But I'm glad, again, it's a bit like with a podcast. It's legacy. It's something you can leave behind. It's like all of your knowledge parked in one place. Alexander says, I think the ability to speak clearly definitely helps. What tips do you have to help someone speak clearer, especially if the accent I have is strong? Do you know what? I think accents are great. I think what differentiates you as a host of a podcast to anybody else out there is your accent, is your personality. It's what makes you you, and you should embrace it and not shy away from it. To speak clearer, honestly, the biggest mistake people make is speaking too quickly. And I think I've done that during this episode, during this live webinar. Just working with a client at the moment, and we got her to redo her show trailer, which is the first thing you release as a podcast, which is like a minute talking about what your podcast is about, who is it for, and who you are, and the first thing that somebody would find when listening to your podcast. So I would encourage people to speak a lot slower, as I'm speaking now. And if you do it visually, if you're recording them live, you get away with more than if you're just recording audio. Like a long silence on audio sounds like really long. If it's on video and you pause and you look at the screen, you're kind of catching someone's attention. It's not quite as powerful on audio, but I would say to speak clearer, I would definitely just slow down and embrace the accent. That's just imposter syndrome kicking in, Alexander. Hope you saw it. I called it out. It's imposter syndrome. Samantha says, I think people prefer audio now to reading. Almost too much content out there to read. I agree with you, but again, that's just my opinion. I think with blogs, I used to read blogs all the time. I don't read many blogs anymore. I really don't. I prefer reading books to listening to books, interestingly enough. I love listening to podcasts, and I've tried to embrace Audible and listening to books, but I just want to write stuff down, and I can't because I'm normally walking, running in a car when I'm listening to audiobooks. So I prefer podcasts. Thank you, Paola. Love the 5 bloody months. Lots of love. Get you, Alex. It is about taking the plunge, especially if you are passionate about sharing your knowledge. 100%. What benefits have you found from podcast? Wow, Priya, that's it. That's a huge question for me. Biggest one I think that I could share with you all today, or some of the biggest benefits is going to be the fact that it increases your visibility and your authority. That's the one I was going for. It increases your authority. And what I've found is a massive benefit. And I was doing live events beforehand, but only, small live events, like 50 to 100 people when I was working with Virgin Startup. Started doing their monthly events down here in Bournemouth. Then we were doing Brighton, London, Manchester, under my own Screw It, Just Do It banner. So I already had that, but it definitely adds another layer to being an authority in your space. You're able, for me, benefits of being able to have conversations with these amazing people. Like if you literally just do a top 100 dream list, who do you want to speak to in the world? Who would be in your top 100 list? Podcast gives you the ability to reach out to those people. And you might doubt me. You say, well, who the hell is going to agree to be interviewed by me to start with? Look, it worked for me. Piers Linney, who I chatted to last week, that took me one LinkedIn message and Piers agreed to speak. Likewise, Richard Reed, the founder of Innocent, I literally got one email back. Let's do it, he said, which was great because it kind of fit in with my Screw It, Just Do It motto on my podcast. But you'll be surprised. And does things like that take time? They do. But, I helped one of my clients last week launch their podcast. They went #1 in Mauritius. They went number 22 in the UK. They can now start their email conversations to prospective guests with the line, top 25 UK podcast would like to interview you. How much more powerful is that than, can I interview you? For what? You don't have a podcast, you don't have a vlog, you don't have a blog. chance you don't have a live events business. So just think about it in those terms, or you don't have any big followings on social media that you could do a live potentially with them, an Instagram live or a Facebook live. So for me, it just gives you more authority. It sets you apart from your competition. Like there's only 1.8 million podcasts in the world. What's the world's population? I have no idea, but there are 37 million YouTube channels out there. There's only 1.8 million podcasts. So is it going to set you and your brand apart from everybody else? 100% it is. 100% it is. As Bernadette says, people usually speak quickly as they are nervous and ramble. I know from experience. And sometimes, Bernadette, yes, that can be an excitement as well as anxiety. I know I speak quicker, and that's because my energy goes up when I have a really good guest and I get excited about what we're talking about and finding out about them. Whereas if my guest is really boring, then the tone of the conversation kind of comes down and my energy comes down. So yes, Jocelyn said, yes, difference is beautiful, more interesting, unique. And you'll also find, whilst I certainly won't get mistaken for Piers Linney or Richard Reed, what does happen is by you interviewing people like that on your platform, you do get this elevated effect of authority by being associated with people like that. And I've had this amazing experience where people then refer other people. So I had Mark Victor Hansen, who wrote 1 Minute Millionaire, Chicken Soup for the Soul. He sold more books than J.K. Rowling, 500 million books. He contacted me during lockdown to come on my show. And did I ever think, when I read his book 11 years ago, it was the first entrepreneurial / self-help book I'd ever read, did I ever think that he would ask to come on my show? Not in a million years. But what he found out was that he was launching a new book. He would normally go on a book tour, pick a country because he loves travel, and him and his wife Crystal would then spend a quarter, 3 months, whatever, traveling around that country, speaking at bookstores and live events. He couldn't do that anymore. So instead he decided to do a podcast tour. So he reached out to come and speak on my podcast. Since then, and he's a pro, I didn't even have to ask him to refer any guests to me. He's now automatically referring people every week that I should interview. And these people are all, A-listers in the space that I want to be interviewing people. So things like that, I won't dwell too long on that one question, but the benefits are astronomical. Now with sponsorship of my podcast as well, that's life-changing for sure, depending on the figures that you get. And you can monetize podcasts. I do an episode on my course, 12 different ways that I've found that you can monetize a podcast, be that, as Mark did, selling a book, be that selling a live event, selling a course. There's a million different ways you can do it. So let's have a look. So yeah, anybody asking about being interviewed for my podcast? So we have a process for that now. And my PA Lorraine will talk you through that process. If you literally just, we're going to type it into the box. And look, if we don't interview you for our show, and like I say, the people that we're looking to interview at the moment are the likes of Lord Billamoria from Cobra Beer, our Ray Kelvin from Ted Baker, who's the last one I'm doing this year? I haven't got my diary in front of me. Forgot the name of the person I'm interviewing. Evan Carmichael, who Mark Victor Hansen recommended. So he's got 2.6 million YouTube subscribers. So those are the kind of things, kind of people that we're looking for, the kind of metrics that I'm looking to grow my podcast to a top 1% show in the world. Because you'll find that if your speakers share your podcast with their audience, you will, on average, gain about 5% of their social media following. So that's one of the key metrics when it comes to growing your podcast, and one that I'm actively pursuing at the moment. But look, again, do a top 100 list. Look at the Apple Podcast app, the purple one. Look at the charts, browse the charts, and write down the top 100 podcasts for your niche, because you might not fit into my niche. It is really narrow. after 300 episodes, the kind of people that I'm looking to get on the show. But again, look at whose podcast you like and reach out to them to go on their podcast. So I've typed in mine there. We have a process. We literally send you to Lorraine will give you a link to a spreadsheet and just fill in the questions there. And we look at personally look at everybody that asks to be interviewed. And if someone's got a unique story, or they have a particular community of people that we think would like to listen to our show, then 100% we're going to do that. What's the cost for a 30-minute podcast session? What do you mean by that, Astrid? Do you mean like coaching with myself, for example? If you do, drop me a message again. I will let you know. So I've got a coaching program, and we do 2 30-minute calls a month as part of that as well. And you also get all of the templates, scripts, roadmaps that we've created to take our clients literally from coming up with the idea right through to growing the community. So starts at like £100. We've just redone it. We've just done a beta testing. But it's in that, if you look at ultimatepodcastmastery.com, that will take you to the course, and that also then leads you to the coaching program if you buy the course. But I can also share with you separately. Send me a message. You can either send it to lorraine@podpreneur.co.uk, or I'll put in my own email there as well, folks, alex@podpreneur.co.uk. I'll carry on for a few minutes longer and answer every question on here. I'm happy to do that. Where can I access the course? So that's the link there, ultimatepodcastmastery.com. Thank you, Shalini. I'm going to post that up now as well. And I will answer, as I say, all of your questions. ultimatepodcastmastery.com. And it nearly killed me, but I'm glad. I'm glad I did it. And for me now, I actually get more of a kick on seeing the likes of my clients and students this week, like when Farah got to number 22 in the UK and number 1 in Mauritius. That was pretty cool. And you've literally got number 2 and number 3, Gary Vaynerchuk and Tim Ferriss, and she's above both of those. And she's like, how the hell can I do that? And it's like, because you follow the instructions. It's what we've learned over the last 4 years. So let me answer any more questions. Jocelyn, series, excellent idea. Very good. Obviously, bigger picture overview, more interesting. Thank you, Alex. We don't want to host, would never happen. Yeah, look, I'm working with people as well, and they will reach out and say, so for me, I love the fact if somebody within that organization wants to be the host, wants to own the show, because they might already have the culture of that company embedded in them, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the CEO or the founder. But equally, I'm working with other clients, and they will look to outsource the hosting duties. Who was I speaking to? A European lingerie company, and they were looking to get a very well-known TV personality that they'd worked with before as the host of their podcast. So all depends on budgets, doesn't it, really? And I was working with Nails Inc. as well, but they were getting Thea Green. They're using it as which I found really interesting. Again, I'm getting this more and more, using it to boost her profile as a leader in the female entrepreneurship space. So using it, and they were doing a series as well, Jocelyn, actually. So they're using it, one, to coincide with a brand new product launch. So every season they would do a series. So, winter, autumn, spring, summer, they would launch a new product. They would tie it in with a podcast, tie it in with guests that would fit in with that. They would also tie it in with a live event, but we know where live events are at the moment. Lucy, I'm new to podcasting. How would I do a podcast around a product-based business? Exactly how I've just said. Let me have a quick drink. Like I said, I'm happy to stay on and answer all your questions. You can email me, alex@podpreneur.co.uk. If you'd like to look at being a guest, like I say, we've got a really narrow funnel for potential guests, but you can email my PA, lorraine@podpreneur.co.uk. And if you'd like to just have a look at the course, then go to ultimatepodcastmastery.com. It's also got coaching options. And And I've also got another branch, which is the agency, which is we've got 3 done for you options where we work with different brands on literally everything from ideation through to creation to distribution, editing, production, launch, and then ongoing growth. But Lucy, so as I say, to be honest with you, so product-based business is perfect, and those the type. No one say majority. We work with everybody, and also UK, US-based businesses. We work with all sorts, but product-based business is great because I love tying it in with a season and a series, and making it a launch. And you could get a number of really interesting speakers in your space, in the space that your business is in. I don't know whether it's in, the sports space, whether it's in the legal space, whether it's in the accounting space. I've worked with all sorts of brands in all different areas. It doesn't matter what area you're in, you can still find super interesting people that you could talk about the hot topics that are in your industry. What problems do you need to solve in your industry? And who could you get to facilitate that discussion around solving those problems in your industry? Or is it you talking about those issues yourselves and positioning yourself as the authority in that space, tying it in with a new launch of your business as well? There's so much you can do. Drop me a message, have a conversation. More than happy to have a chat. Let's have a look. More and more questions. Super popular, guys. Thank you so much, guys and girls. Let me scroll down. Philip has to go now, but found your presentation really interesting, and it's certainly given me a few ideas. Pianist. Awesome. There you go. Audio. So you had to go. I know I've ran over by 12 minutes already. Lucy, thank you. I will wrap up now, guys. I can see a couple of private questions. I'm going to see if I can access them. Paola, many thanks. Alex, for yet another massive dose of inspiration and advice. Astrid, great webinar, Alex. Thank you, everybody. When did you start it, says Edwin. Sorry, I'm just seeing these now. It's taking this time for them to come through. I'm going to answer them now. If you've got to go, I appreciate it. I'm back on at 2 p.m. with Will Niven. Come and join us then. So I started my podcast. I think I covered that 3.5 years ago now. So we're coming up to 300 episodes, which is, yeah, it's pretty nuts, to be honest with you. I never thought I'd get to 3 episodes. And I shared in a post, I think it was on Saturday, that when I launched my podcast, I had 4 downloads in week 1. So you can see where the imposter syndrome got even more layered that week, because that would have stopped me launching for 5 months, and then 4 people listened to it, and clearly probably my wife, my mother, and my 2 children. No, probably not my 2 children, actually, probably not interested. Probably still haven't listened to it. I don't know. Jordan, when do you think the best time to put out content is? Facebook, Instagram, certain days and times. So this might not surprise you, but my answer is going to be, when is your audience, your ideal customer, on your favorite social platform where they hang out? So first of all, it's a question is, when do you think the best time to put out content is? What days and times? So I'm going to say, think of your ideal customer, client. What days and times are they on social media? Okay. And if you have, for example, a Facebook group, if you haven't, start one. You can see the most popular days and times that people are commenting, that people are posting, that people are liking and sharing. So it gives you all this great data that you can then factor in when you put your content out. So, does your audience go on Instagram? Do they go on LinkedIn? If they do, when is it? Is it weekdays, Monday to Friday? Is it, just after lunch? Is it after dinner? When is it? And I put out my podcast at like 1 minute past midnight. And the reason being that we're now in 150 countries. So I want as many people around the world to access it at a specific time. I've toyed around. You can play around with everything, choosing your category, what times you post. But I've found that seems to be far better than posting at 6, 7 in the morning, which is what I thought would be the most popular time for a UK audience. But as I say, we're now in 150 countries. That kind of goes out the window. Oh my God, there's millions of questions here that I haven't even seen. I will answer them before I go, and then I'm back on in about 30 minutes. Is there data to establish the link between content and client sales for B2B? The link between content and client. That's a really good question, Tony. It's a very good question indeed. So for me, I would say an obvious way to track this would be to see when you're posting content that, say, for example, you're then sharing a link, like I am, say, here, ultimatepodcastmastery.com, can I then go and see a correlation between sales of my course to when I've posted a link about it? That would be a direct link between content and client sales. But that is a great question. I'm just going to try and whip through these. I won't want to keep you here all day. George Theo, is there any way to hear this talk again? I came too late to the gig, and there seems to be no way to contact the hosts of this. I'm just going to copy and paste your email and drop you a line. Yes, so everybody, we are putting Festival of Enterprise YouTube channel. Speaking of YouTube, you'll be able to see and hear all of the talks last week and this week. And I believe we're putting them on our website as well, at the festivalofenterprise.co.uk website as well. Apologies if you have tried to contact anybody, or maybe you just can't see a button to contact anybody on here. Tony, what are the key metrics, data one needs to collect and need to hit before they can look for sponsorship deals? Great question. Is it a case of sending the stats to the company asking for sponsorship, or do they find you? So really good question, Tony. So there are companies out there that specifically do this. So some of the hosting platforms have already started doing this as well. So Acast, A-C-A-S-T, is the biggest one in the world. So, for example, I was helping the guys, Candy Kittens, so Jamie Lang and Ed Williams, with some advice about their podcast before they launched that. And they'd already signed up with Acast because Jamie, as you might have seen on, what's the dancing program called? Strictly, has already got significant social following. So they knew they could monetize that already. And they already have a platform set up to monetize that. There's also a big company in the States called Midroll, M-I-D-R-O-L-L. And that is their business, literally connecting advertisers with podcasts. And the key metric is, it's a really good question, the key metric is 10,000. So once you hit that, they'll have a conversation with you. They were trialing in the US a micro influencer, as they call it, platform where you had to have 5,000. For me, you're still not going to make a huge amount of money that way unless you've got hundreds of thousands, really. For me, you are going to get a better deal monetarily by your existing connections, people you already have a relationship with, people who already know that you have an engaged captive audience. And for me, it doesn't need to be, if your audience is huge, but they're not very engaged compared to a really small audience, but super engaged, where am I going to spend my sponsorship dollars? I know which one I'm going to spend my money on. Lots of thank yous. John, Julie, Joanna, Bernadette, Jocelyn, Astrid. I'm going to keep answering the questions till I'm done, and then I'm going to go and get some food. So it's a good question from Catherine, bid writer and proposal consultant. For podcasts relating to quite a niche topic or area, what would be your tips for increasing engagement with your, and I think that's the last question, actually. It is brilliant question, Catherine. So, and look, for me, like I talk about this on my course, talk about this in my Facebook group. For me, for everyone starting out, unless you are a well-known celebrity or you have a big following in your space, I would encourage everyone to go niche when it comes to your topic and your area. And for me, tips for increasing engagement with your podcast content. So the biggest challenge podcasting has compared to other platforms is that instead of, say, if you're watching a video or you're reading a blog, you're normally in front of a screen. So if it's asking you to click on this link, it's really easy to do because you're already looking at it. When it comes to podcasts, if you're giving somebody a call to action to try and get them to engage with you, then frequently they're either driving the car, they're walking the dog, they're working out in the gym, they're doing their housework. So therein lies the challenge. But there are ways around that, and I've had numerous people contact me recently who are developing different software where they are addressing this specific problem, because it is, in my eyes, the biggest challenge that we have in podcasting. And there is chat that before long, the next social media platform will be some way where your listeners can directly engage with the podcast host. Whether we need another social platform, that's another story. But tips to increase engagement. So what you want to do is you essentially, one of the things you might want to do is get people to move from listening to your podcast to take them somewhere else where you can capture their attention. Yeah. So different ways you can do that is by sending them somewhere, giving them a link, which you can again embed in your show notes, which would go on your website, which would go in the content that people would find on Apple and Spotify, etc. You can do all that. One thing I liked, and what I've done recently as well, is by offering people like a free resource. And a client in the US, NPE, every single episode, they got a big team, like 100 of people. And every episode, they would create a brand new ebook. And to get the information from that ebook, you would have to go to their website, give away your email address, and get that in return. So anything like that, where you can, build a community and own that community, rather than have, as I mentioned before, a Facebook own that community or whoever else own that community, I would encourage you to do. Otherwise, you're asking questions. And for me, a great way to do it as well to build your podcast is to go on another podcast to talk about it. Because if you think people that listen to podcasts already listening to podcasts, so if you're on a podcast talking about your podcast, it's an easier shift for them to go and listen to you rather than you're sending them to go to an Instagram or a website or whatever. That makes sense? Hopefully that's answered your question. I'm just going to double check. I think that's pretty much it, guys. I know I've run over, but I've stayed on to answer your questions. And like I said, I'm more than happy to do that because it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. And it's something, as I say, that's literally changed my life by podcasting, as dramatic as that sounds. I know there are rules for paid advertisements for content on things like posts like Instagram. Are there any rules we need to be aware of for podcasts? No, I don't think so, Tony. I know what you mean. Like with Instagram, it will come up with like a warning. This sounds like sponsored content or something like that. You need to tag them and submit. Blah, 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 blah. There isn't when it comes to podcasting for that. You can literally get a sponsor, and you then read out their sponsored message over the course of that show. Just going to go back to the chat, see if there's any last questions. Many thanks. It's quite useful, mate. You are more than welcome. Info from business coach, Chrysalis Partners Consultancy. Didn't see your name, but yeah, you're more than welcome. Happy to share. Shalini, thank you. Tony, thanks. Priya, thank you. Alex, Lucy Wells, thank you. Really helpful. Julie, thank you. John, thank you. Alex, Joanna, thanks. Alex, really insightful session. Thanks for today from Bernadette. Okay, that's it. That's a wrap, everybody. I'm going to sign off. I'm going to stop sharing first of all. Boom. Okay. I'm going to exit stage left. Thank you for joining me. Next session. So literally networking is going to start in about 5 minutes, I think. So if you haven't done that before, you could join us here at the Festival of Startups by going back to the lounge and joining one of the tables where you can network with our guests. And then I'm going to be bringing a good friend of mine, Will Niven, on where we are going to be talking about websites, his top 10 tips on what to do when it comes to optimizing your website, getting in the best possible shape to attract more customers, more potential customers, more leads for you and your business. So I hope you enjoyed that. That was meant to be an hour, 90 minutes. That's me. Apologies. Once I get going on something I'm passionate about, I really struggle to slow down. But those of you who have called it a day today, like Bernadette, please post back tomorrow. Again, we've got we've got 4 amazing sessions tomorrow, I believe, starting tomorrow morning. So check out the schedule, and I'll see you later. Bye, everybody.